Hi there, and thank you. Welcome to our first vlog on our Travel Health Professionals UK website. I'm Neil.
And I'm Euan.
And thank you for those that took part in our poll on our Facebook page. There was a unanimous result.
That's right. I think we had 13 people voted for Zika virus, so that's the one we're going to go for. By the way, that was the Facebook group called Travel Health Professionals UK. Just in case anyone hasn't seen it, you can try and join that group if you are a travel health professional from the UK.
Great. So Zika, pretty hot topic at the moment. Euan, did you want to give us a bit of a background and overview of?
Yes, certainly. So Zika virus is an arbovirus native to Africa.
Just stop there a second. What's an arbovirus?
So an arbovirus stands for arthropod-borne virus. So arthropods are a group of animals that include insects, and it also includes ticks, for example, like arachnids, so spiders and ticks. So it's actually, most of these diseases are passed on either by mosquitoes or ticks, for example. It's actually a member of the flavivirus family, and there are a number of other diseases you will have heard of that are a member of this family, including dengue fever, including West Nile fever, including tick-borne encephalitis, and of course yellow fever. And interestingly enough, yellow fever is where the kind of flavivirus got its name from, because flavus in Latin is yellow, and a lot of these diseases cause jaundice, which is where they got the flavi and the yellow fever from.
Great. So just in summary then, so the Zika virus is passed on via mosquitoes, correct?
It's passed on by usually by the Aedes mosquito. Aedes aegypti is one of the species, but yeah, Aedes mosquito. That's right. Yeah.
And is mosquitoes the only way the virus can be passed on?
Well, no, actually. Although it is an insect-borne disease, in 2009, an American who was a biologist doing research in Senegal was out there studying mosquitoes, actually, and got bit several times, came back to the United States and developed symptoms of Zika virus after having unprotected sex with his wife, and then she developed symptoms of Zika virus. And that was the only case that they've known of an insect-borne disease being passed on between humans sexually, until yesterday, as you will have probably seen in the news. Another American has actually returned to Dallas, I think, from...
I think it was Venezuela they travelled to, yeah.
Where there's been another confirmed case of sexually transmitting Zika virus from person to person.
Oh, right, okay.
So, given the fact that it is passed on by mosquitoes, how would you say we should protect ourselves from Zika virus?
Well, I want to focus initially on one of the big things that's been out there. It's about pregnancy.
Yep.
So let's hit it straight away. So there's been quite key outbreaks in South America, but Brazil predominantly. And what they had noticed in Brazil, alongside the large outbreak of Zika virus, there was quite a significant increase in babies being born with microcephaly, which is, in simple terms, a baby born with a very small brain.
Right.
Now, the World Health Organization have looked at the information, and at present they don't feel there's enough to say that there is a scientific link between these babies being born and pregnancy, but they think that there's enough to say that there is likely, so there's possibly a causal link between the two. First piece of advice with regards to that is the World Health Organization, Public Health England, the national bodies are advising that if you are a pregnant woman, not to travel to countries where there is risk of the Zika virus being transmitted.
Seems reasonable.
It's a quite clear piece of advice.
Yeah. So that's pregnant women.
Yeah.
What about the rest of us? Should we not travel to these countries as well?
Well, with the rest of us, the reality is with Zika virus, 80% of people that get Zika virus will not have any signs and symptoms of the disease whatsoever.
Right.
Which is a key percentage. It's a very large percentage that people aren't going to see signs and symptoms.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the 20% that do, we know that it's generally a very mild illness. You might get cold, flu-like symptoms, a bit feverish, muscle aches, and possibly conjunctivitis as well.
Yeah.
Do you seek medical attention over those? No, you treat the symptoms. There's no cure to it, so you treat the symptoms. If your condition worsens, that's when to seek medical
But
assistance.
I've heard that there's this disease, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I've heard that could be linked to Zika virus.
In previous outbreaks, there's been similar studies where they've looked at potential more severe side effects. And yes, there is a bit of evidence to say that some people will maybe get Guillain-Barré syndrome disease.
And if anyone's wondering, Guillain-Barré syndrome is it's a disease of the peripheral nervous system. It's when the immune system attacks the nervous system, and it can actually leave people, give people like quite a lot of peripheral nervous problems as well as muscle weakness. Some people can actually take weeks or even months to recover from the disease. It can be quite severe, but actually most people do make a full recovery from it.
Yeah, and I think what we need to present is that is very rare, very rare that's going to happen. Yeah. So what are the key things that we need to be telling out the people that we're seeing in clinics and as travel health professionals? The key thing, bite avoidance. It's the key message we need to get across is about bite avoidance. Also, the thing that we need to be aware of is this mosquito is a daytime biting mosquito. So the key time that it tends to bite is usually in the mornings and early evenings.
And that's different from the malarial mosquitoes.
It is, yeah, because the malarial mosquitoes dust till dawn, so you're looking at more overnights.
Yeah.
So this one is potentially biting you during the day and passing on the virus during the day.
And that's the same as for dengue fever, chikungunya as well, which are also... There are big epidemics of and pandemics around the world with that as well, so they're daytime biting mosquitoes as well.
Yeah, so the bite avoidance measures then. So the key things, insect repellent, DEET. DEET is the insect repellent that we know works against mosquitoes. Right. We'd recommend 20 to 50% DEET. The lower the percentage, the more frequently you need to reapply it. But most people, for DEET is completely safe to use, even down in young children as well. You can use DEET safely.
Yeah. So insect repellent,
that's the big one. Yeah. Covering up as well. So long sleeves, trousers rather than shorts, around the key times as well.
So it's not really what you think of when you think of going to Brazil, for example, hanging out on the beach.
No, but obviously the realities are that people are going to be sunbathing, people are going to be going out swimming. So the key thing that we'd say is sunscreen on first. If your skin's going to be exposed, sunscreen on first, DEET on afterwards. Okay, so the DEET will then will hopefully prevent the mosquitoes biting. And the final thing that we really need to be thinking about is about mosquito nets as well. So obviously we've said it's not a nighttime biting mosquito, but we know that you're more likely to go for daytime naps and things like that. So get into the habit of using a mosquito net. Yeah. But in a lot of the places there'll be malaria as well anyway. Yeah. I mean, mosquitoes at night. So get in the habit of using the mosquito net. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent.
Definitely. Brilliant. So they're the key things.
Okay.
Yeah, and so moving on then, so do we know much about the disease at all? Yeah.
Well...
Is there much research on it?
There's various bits and bobs of research out there. A lot of it was done in the 1950s when it was first isolated in mosquitoes in Uganda and also in monkeys, and that was about 1952. And then I think in 1954 it was isolated in humans as well in Nigeria in a girl. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, there's also some research to show that they in a lab environment, they were able to get the Aedes, demonstrate that the Aedes mosquito was able to pass the disease from like a monkey to a mouse, that kind of thing. So they were able to demonstrate that it was Aedes mosquito that was passing on the disease. So that was kind of done all that was done in the 50s. Incidentally, in Africa, where this was done, there haven't been any great outbreaks in Africa.
And why is that, Euan? Why are we now seeing this outbreak in South America causing quite a lot of problems, as you can see? And why has there not been the outbreak?
So essentially, it's because the disease has evolved in Africa with the population, and the African population, for most people, will have natural immunity to the disease, and that's why they haven't had any huge outbreaks. Mm-hmm. Well, that is different, obviously, for the populations of other parts of the world.
Right. Okay.
There was also other bits of research that demonstrated not so long ago, 2015, in Japan, a case study of a traveller coming back from Thailand, from Koh Samui, I think it was, and they developed, let me just refresh my screen there. And the traveller developed Zika virus, returned to Japan. They were able to diagnose it with a new urine test, and incidentally, it was actually missed on the blood test because very similar markers that they were looking for, antibodies to dengue fever, yellow fever, for example. It was very similar, and that's why they missed it. So it's interesting that that's something they'll probably be looking at now, is making sure they're testing, either using this new urine test or using maybe different blood markers to test it.
Interesting stuff.
So research-wise, let's. There's a lot of media hype out there, and I don't know what to make of it. Some of it seems like it's really hyped up. Some of it maybe seems quite sensible. Can you kind of give us a bit of an overview of what that's all about?
Yeah, well, it's worrying, isn't it? The amount you read at the moment about out there about Zika, it's quite scary times in many ways. I just want to go through some of the headlines and some of the reporting on it and see what you feel about it as well, and get your reaction to it.
Yeah.
But let's start off with the World Health Organization. On the 1st of February this week, they announced that the Zika virus was a public health emergency of international concern.
The same as
Ebola.
Ebola was, yeah.
Which, in all of our minds, makes us think, this is pretty scary, is it? What's your thoughts on that, Euan? Do you think it's something that we should be worried about at the same level as Ebola? Do you think the World Health Organization think it is?
I think the World Health Organization were criticised quite heavily, weren't they, during the Ebola outbreaks for not acting fast enough. And I'm wondering whether, especially with the build-up to the Olympic Games, that kind of thing, they've decided to get in there early. Whether right or wrong, I mean, I think it is a public health emergency that should be dealt with, and to a certain extent, I think they should treat more diseases in this way. Yeah,
well, possibly that's a way of looking at it. So just coming on to a few more headlines, then Sky News, Zika warning, virus spreading explosively. The Independent reports, Vladimir Putin orders Russian scientists to develop vaccine, which it reports plans to have the vaccine ready by March.
Wow.
Who knew? Who knew that it was that quick to develop a vaccine?
That could be impressive, yeah.
The Obama calls for urgent action. Research and vaccine must be speeded up. The Sun, Zika outbreak is declared a global public health emergency, making it as serious as Ebola. So they're feeding onto that whole World Health Organization statement, aren't they? Similarly, the Mirror, Zika declared global emergency with virus on the same scale as Ebola. Is this the same scale as Ebola? If you were to go off travelling, Euan, let me pose a question to you. If you were going off travelling to, let's just say Africa, because we know that Zika's passed on in Africa, passed on in Africa as well, and young, fit, healthy person, what would your concern be about? Would you be concerned about getting, let's say, Ebola? Would that heighten your, if you were going to a country where Ebola was being passed on, would you be concerned?
If I was to be diagnosed with Ebola, I would be very, very concerned. And also, if the outbreak was going on, I would actually be, very worried about getting it, because it's very easy to pass on from person to person, and I would be seriously worried if I was Ebola.
But not putting words in your mouth, I'm guessing that if you're going to a country where Zika is being currently being transmitted, your level of anxiety would be less.
Considerably less. If I was diagnosed with Zika, I would also be considerably less worried than if I was diagnosed with Ebola.
Right, okay. That's interesting, isn't it? I think we need to look at things in perspective. One of the reports that I did find quite interesting was in Al Jazeera, and it was reporting about the Rio Olympics, which is obviously a big concern, because coming up in about 6 months' time, we've got the Rio Olympics coming up, and the article was advising about pregnant women not travelling to Brazil, and it described it as an unprecedented warning that pregnant women shouldn't travel to a country where there are mosquito-borne diseases from.
Right.
So, is there any other diseases, Euan, that you might think of advising pregnant women not to travel to a country if they're being passed on?
Malaria, yellow fever, a number of other diseases, really.
Yeah. So it's quite incredible that it's an unprecedented way to describe it, isn't it?
And yet we frequently, as travel health professionals, as you know, advise people, pregnant women, not to travel to countries where malaria is a risk.
Yeah, and it should be the first piece of advice that we're giving to pregnant women is to be thinking about that. We know that pregnant women are more attractive to mosquitoes, and the subsequent conditions that might be a lot more severe in the event. Sadly, there wasn't many articles that I could find that were actually reporting in a much more responsible way. There are 2 articles, one within the Huffington Post, which was titled "Keep Calm and Travel On," while most travellers shouldn't let Zika virus derail their travel plans, which actually looks at it and in a much more practical way, pragmatic approach to it, and following the guidance that is out there. Public Health England, World Health Organization are not saying there should be a travel ban. They're not saying that people shouldn't travel. They're just saying that people shouldn't take correct precautions. Yeah. Similarly, there was an article in The Guardian as well, that basically their headline is "Zika isn't a global health threat like Ebola. It needs targeted response."
Yeah.
Which is correct. There's public health response, which the governments of the country is going to be responsible for, but then there's also the response that we should be thinking about in regards to the advice that we give to travellers as well when we're seeing them. So,
I mean, I think with Ebola, like the populations, people around the world were worried that this would spread, and because of the way Ebola can spread, it was a potential possibility that it could have spread to all over the world. Obviously, certainly looking at the fact that it's transmitted via insects predominantly, it's only going to be able to be spread to countries where these type of mosquitoes are exist and can pass things on. Definitely. But obviously that's still a serious thing, and of course this passing on sexually is something that we just don't know how easy it is to do that. We don't know the extent to which that could affect the populations.
And I think you've hit on a few notes there why it's becoming a bit more hyped, is that there are quite a few unknowns with this disease. That, can you get Zika twice? Does being infected with Zika the first time then give you immunity for the rest of your life? Questions that we just don't really have the scientific evidence for yet. And the World Health Organization were very honest when they wrote their statement on the 1st of February that realistically there's not a high level of scientific evidence around it. It's more that they're basing their recommendations on the causal stuff, so the evidence that they have got out there of other cases that have been arising at the same time.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarise around the general advice we'd give about Zika is we're saying that possibly the media has hyped this quite a lot, but it's probably a reasonable response from the WHO to treat it as an international emergency. But we're not in any way saying that healthy people who are not pregnant or not planning to get pregnant shouldn't travel to countries where Zika is a risk, and in fact to the Olympic Games, for example.
Exactly,
especially if you've already bought your ticket for loads of money.
And the key thing, like I said, bite avoidance, DEET insect repellent, mosquito nets, and cover-up protection.
Brilliant. There's probably loads more stuff we could talk about. We could go on about this for ages, but I think that I think
we summarised what we needed to today.
Rounds up what we want to say.
But if you've got questions and you want to discuss it more, please use the Facebook page, use the comments section on the Travel Health Professionals UK Facebook page, and we'll be keen to know your thoughts on it, and if there's any areas that you wanted extra information on, we can go away on that.
Brilliant, yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you for our next instalment.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.